How's it going, everybody? This is Ray with the Houston Film Fanatics, Sunny 99.1, and we are back at the Hobby Center because spring has arrived at the Hobby Center. And of course, I mean, Spring Awakening has arrived. The show is going to be playing now through Sunday, October the 20th, so you guys have a chance to come down and see this show. We, of course, have some very talented cast members who are going to be talking to us a little bit about the show. So if you guys would please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your characters with the show.
I'm Raven Troup, and I'm playing Ilsa, who's like the just random floater who got away from the terrible adults, or so we think.
I'm Nathan Salstone, and I'm playing the character of Moritz, who's also an outcast in the group in that while everybody is going through their natural occurrences in their pubescent stages, Moritz doesn't quite understand and can't comprehend what's going on with him, and that leads him to quite an existential crisis.
Now, for those of you guys that haven't seen the show, I recommend doing your homework because I've always wanted to see the show. I've heard a lot of buzz about the show, but I didn't know what the show was about myself, and I brought my dad to see it. So maybe read up about the show before you bring your family members, just so you know who you're going to be sitting next to and how awkward that may be, because there's some pretty heavy subject matter in this show. These two guys right here, you guys are like the yin and yang of this show because your characters couldn't be further apart from their approach to things. Because, I mean, you, like you said, you're very, like, bohemian, very chill. Your character is the most uptight person I've ever seen on stage. And you portray that incredibly well. Incredibly well. Tell me a little bit about how you guys prepared for these roles.
I mean, the rehearsal process was strenuous, but it was necessary. Also, for me, I had to make a whole playlist before to I have to get into a very zen yet sad state of mind.
I could see a lot of yoga in your prep work. We're gonna have some tea, we're gonna light a candle, we're gonna hang out.
There's definitely tea and mood lighting.
That's nice. How about you?
For Moritz, I approached it from a few different standpoints. One being teenagers in general, just sort of observing teenagers in their bodies, watching them, how it's like, you know, a fawn learning to walk on its legs. That's what a baby deer is, right?
Yes.
Doe? A doe?
No, that's a girl.
What's a fawn?
Fawn.
Anyway.
It's something.
A baby deer learning to walk on its legs. They're so awkward and not in their body. So that was sort of my physical approach to this character, in that his feet are kind of turned in and he's concaved. And then there's a bit of a mental illness portion to Moritz, being depression and bipolar disorder, which I diagnosed him for myself, for my own way, into the character. Because mental illness was not something that was recognized or even acknowledged or understood back then in the 1800s. And so, but he's got a lot of lines like, I sleep through the day, or I can't get out of bed, or I'm wired and I'm jittery. And that was sort of my approach into the mindset and the physicality of this character.
Now, one of the things that, I mean, like I said, the subject matter of the show is incredibly heavy. You guys deal with some really intense stuff. Again, look it up, guys. This is a really good show, but very, very intense show. But one of the things that kind of breaks up the intensity is the music that's associated with the show, because it's very alternative rock. How do you guys feel about the soundtrack for the show? Do y'all have favorite numbers? Do you guys have favorite songs, even if it's one that you may not necessarily be a part of?
Oh, I've been obsessed with this soundtrack since the first time I saw it, which was in 2008. Yes, and I got the CD back in the day when you still actual purchase CDs.
There's nothing
and I
wrong
just
with that.
wore it out, and I think the music is so integral because it's a really good juxtaposition to what's actually going on. So it really clicks you into this, oh, this is in their head moment, and I really like the music. It really gets into your spirit. And my favorite number is, I don't know, all of it.
All of it.
It's a lot of good music.
That's good. That's good. That's great. That's very high praise for this show.
I love it.
How about you?
This CD, funny enough, was stuck in my sister's car for as long as we had the car.
Like by choice, or was it just
No, the CD player in the car broke. It ate it,
Wow.
and you couldn't get it out, but you could still play it. A couple tracks skipped, but so we listened to this thing on repeat with no choice. My favorite song is a song called "The Dark I Know Well," which Raven sings a part of. It's a beautiful song, and it comes out of this very serious scene with this rock guitar, like it's genius. And the whole the lights shift. And what's brilliant about the music is that, yeah, you step inside of the characters' heads as opposed to the characters actually speaking to each other in the songs. You know, like most musicals, it's a furtherment of the story. In this song, it's sort of like a backpedal of like, here's why this character is feeling so tense, and in the song they get to step inside their head and finally release it. It's like and we use microphones in the show, and someone asked me why we use microphones, and in my opinion, it's like teenagers, when they're like going through their angsty moments, they you know, like stand in front of their bathroom mirror with like a hairbrush and like are like rocking out to a song in it when nobody can see them, and that's what it feels like on stage, that our characters get to get out their angst and all their emotions through that kind of singing.
It's incredibly true. Now that I'm thinking about it, I totally had like a baseball bat in my room. That it was like one of the little ones, and that was totally my microphone. But it really, it's therapeutic. I like that. Again, with the subject matter of the show, it deals with a lot of, you know, obviously like sexual awakening for these characters that they don't know how to deal with, and then you've got a whole lot of adults that are really not being that open-minded to telling them, you know, hey, this is what's happening to you, this is why you feel that way. Or even more darker and intense things is dealing with, you know, obviously abusive adults and things of that nature. Do you think that even though the show is obviously set, you know, it's dated back in like the early 1900s? Or 1890, 1891. Do you think the subject matter of the show is still very relevant today?
Yes.
I think it's incredibly relevant. I mean, not to spoil anything, but the show deals with sexuality, coming of age, it deals with mental illness, it deals with abortion, it deals with unprotected sex, a lot of things that are quite relevant today in humanity and in politics, and it's incredible that it was written in the 1890s, because every single part of it still feels as relevant, if not more relevant today than it was back then, because now these things are being talked about, except in some cases they're being talked about negatively or to ban some things. And when I heard that the Theater Under the Stars in Texas was going to be doing this show, I thought, Spring Awakening plus Texas, that those two don't go together. I have to be a part of this thing and introduce these human characters to an audience who may not be exposed to them every day.
I definitely heard some surprised gasps through some of the show while watching it, which I think that's awesome, because I mean you're really getting honest reactions out of people, and it's fun because that means that they're going to be talking about this show even after they leave the theater. One of the other things I want to touch on too is the set of the show. I love the way that you need to see it just for that, has done this, because there is a lot of interaction with the adults in the show, and they're kind of talking to the characters majority of the time from this little, it's like I don't even know if it's a balcony or a room that kind of towers above everything. Talk to me about what your thoughts on the set and the way everything is laid out with this show.
The set is mind-blowing, and when we saw the like sketches and stuff for it, the back wall that is lights, I didn't know that was lights, and that just blew my mind when that was explained. But the adult box is really interesting. It's a floating box that's hanging from the grid, and it's just like this little 1891 diorama sitting above this big industrial like set that's just all scaffolding and rails and stuff, and it's just a really interesting play on what the show is and what it is.
Yeah, it's a brilliant idea in that, like, while these kids may feel so empowered by what they're going through and what they're figuring out on their own, the audience still can't get away from the idea that the adults are ever present and always looming over them, and no matter what they do, whether it's good or bad, it is under the jurisdiction and the morals of their parents and all the adults that they live under, which, in my opinion, has a beautiful contrast when there's a very happy scene going on, and then you see the adults saying, oh, we're going to screw this up for them.
Okay, so I always like to end on this question because, I mean, there is no better way to promote a show than from the people that are obviously in the show. You guys are putting your heart, your soul, your time, your efforts into this. Why do people need to come out and see this show?
Because it is relevant. It's still extremely, extremely relevant because life really hasn't changed very much in the past however many hundreds of years. And these are still things that need to be talked about. And it's an artistic medium that can, like, breach subjects that are hard to talk about without hitting you over the head with them. It starts a good, open conversation. It's an open.
Do you want to add anything to that?
Got a lot to say.
I'm gonna sit down now.
No, why do people need to come to this show? People need to come to this show to open their minds and see, like I said, see a human depiction of things that they may not necessarily be open to or be exposed to. And I think even if you are uncomfortable by it, at least sit through it so that you can see, instead of, putting a wall between you and these people, so that you can at least have some empathy or opinion on the actual people that are going through this. Because while this may be a show set in the 1800s, these are real people. We are real people. A lot of our cast, faces the things in the show, and a lot of people in this world face the things that go on in this show. So I'm hoping that it will open people's minds. And like you said about bringing family members, yes, it's good to know about the subject matter, but when people talk about bringing younger people to the show, I think that in itself is the whole point of the show. Parents bringing children to explain what's happening with their bodies and with their lives, and do it in a very appropriate, educated way instead of lying to them or telling them something false that will then possibly mess them up in the future.
I could not agree
Quite heavy.
more. It is very heavy, and I just need to point out my dad actually really loved this show despite the awkward conversation on the ride home. He really, really enjoyed this show. Once again, everybody, check out Spring Awakening. It's playing now at the Hobby Center. You can get tickets at tuts.com, and it's going to be playing through October the 20th. You can see these lovely guys. Bring your family, bring your friends. It's a very educational show. It's an inspiring show, and there is a lot that you can learn, see, educate yourself, and start an open conversation with your family. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you guys so much for talking with us today. And we'll catch you guys next time. This is Ray, Houston Film Fanatics, and Sunny 99.1.